finance, human rights and health. And also I would like to invite loss and damage. Agriculture, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Climate change is posing a great threat to global food security. At the same time, agriculture is greatly contributing to the climate change, especially the intensive meat production industry. The YOUNGO Agriculture Working Group believes the way agriculture is done has to be changed to resist the threat of climate change and to stop contributing to it. We are extremely concerned that the dispute regarding adaptation and mitigation across negotiations is also slowing down the progresses on agricultural issues. This poses an urgent threat to lives, societies, and economies. Furthermore, we call upon all countries to come to the negotiations willing to be flexible, realistic, ambitious, and open-minded. The whole world has to unite and listen to each other for adaptation and mitigation. This is only possible with the technical and financial support of Global North. For the future negotiations to lead to concrete, concerted actions, we completely support the call for a joint SBI work program, or at least the opening of a space for negotiation regarding implementation. This would allow to start concerted action on the essential, complex, and global agricultural issue, and stop only address agriculture on theoretical levels. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to feed the planet while reducing emissions in a way that will be appropriate for all countries and that will take into account their differences. Also, food security and human rights need to be considered as part of the solution and must be respected throughout all action that will be taken. In the name of climate justice, we need to act now. Thank you.
Next, I would like to call, the floor is for the Human Rights Working Group.
Thank you, Safran. My name is Kelvin. I'm speaking on behalf from the Human Rights Working Group of YOUNGO. Firstly, I'll talk about migration. Secondly, about the access to UNFCCC venues for people with disabilities. Then thirdly, about the ongoing negotiations from a human rights perspective. Firstly, migration. There is a need to develop comprehensive policy and programmatic approaches at both the international and national levels by closing the gap between the humanitarian, development and climate change communities and policies. These would involve, for example, factoring climate change adaptation considerations into existing NDCs. The Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, or the WIMXCOM, presents an opportunity for us to call for the much needed development of policy coherence across UN agencies to ensure legal identity and lay safeguard to people displaced due to environmental reasons and climate change. As a second issue, people with disability are a marginalized community that is also highly and disproportionately affected by climate change, while being underrepresented in the negotiations. Their needs should be taken into account, not only under the negotiations, but also around loss and damage, adaptation and mitigation. Thirdly, at COP23, key issues for many indigenous peoples included the protection of traditional knowledge, operationalization of the indigenous peoples and local communities platform in line with the position of the indigenous peoples constituency, adaptation to existing effects of climate change, climate finance, recognition of indigenous rights, and free, prior, direct, and informed consent. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to invite the Health Working Group to proceed forward.
My name is Christian. I'm a final year medical student and a member of the International Federation of Medical Student Associations. I am here to speak on behalf of the Health Working Group of YOUNGO. Why should we talk about health? Because climate is our health, and because climate change kills. Multidisciplinary global efforts are needed to address it. Talking about climate change and health doesn't always have to be negative. The Lancet Commission on Health and Climate Change stated that tackling climate change would be the greatest opportunity for global health this century. Mitigation, climate change mitigation, such as promoting active transport, reducing air pollution, would have the opportunity to majorly improve our health. During the past time, we noticed that negotiators and stakeholders are more attentive to address health, but this is nearly not enough. We demand the ambitious implementation of the Paris Agreement. We demand it for the health of our society and future societies. To this end, We recommend parties to maintain their commitment to health and well-being. We believe that health needs to be at the center of negotiations. We also specifically call for parties to commit to addressing loss and damages in implementation of the agreement in a way that will protect human health. Last, we call on parties to implement the recommendations and follow the proposed actions in the Human and Health Adaptation Report from the 46th session of SEPSTA. Youth of today have innovative ideas for mitigation and adaptation that deserves a place in national policies. Youth are undoubtedly positive agents of change in the world. We are the backbone of the future, leaders of both today and tomorrow. Involve us, and together we stand stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, and now we'll move on to the finance.
Thank you. My name is Colton. I'll be speaking on behalf of finance. To achieve the targets set out in Paris, ambitious levels of climate finance will be needed for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage. The $100 billion goal is merely a starting point, and parties need to acknowledge the dramatic increases that are required. We would like to emphasize that developing countries require additional support from the Adaptation Fund to ensure that the growing frequency of climate disasters does not lead to continuous economic setbacks that prevent the implementation of sustainable development strategies. The COP must address that there is currently not enough adaptation finance and address the fact that adaptation projects have difficulty growing under existing conditions. Furthermore, mitigation funding is needed to facilitate the expansion of low-carbon infrastructure, and loss and damage needs to be mobilized to aid countries who have already begun to face the immediate impacts of heat waves, droughts, and sea level rise that disproportionately affect the least developed countries, small island developing states, and African countries. As parties review the process for implementing their NDCs, we would like to emphasize the importance of aligning financial commitments with NDC outcomes. With the expectation that ambitions continue to increase as the Talanoa dialogue occurs in 2018, in a constructive spirit of trust, the amount of finance pledged should also rise. Donor countries need to recognize their contributions to the impacts of climate change and make sure that they are contributing their fair share to the solution. This includes the use of accounting modalities that ensure transparency, making sure that there's no double counting, and a commitment to only grants and grant equivalents to be counted as climate finance. In order to reach the total amount of finance needed, additional investments are required from a wide variety of actors through several different modalities, and partnerships between public and private finance need to be fostered to encourage innovative financial options. A reaffirmation of the 2020 $100 billion target represents a key opportunity for parties to show their commitment, and YOUNGO encourages all parties to show their support for COP23 to act as a platform for promoting essential financial commitments in the lead up to the Talanoa dialogue and COP24. Thank you.
Thank you, and now we move to the ACE.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Eating, and I speak on behalf of the YOUNGO Working Group on Action on Climate Empowerment. The Growing Group on ACE was already formed before COP21 in Paris. We recently conducted an analysis on the incorporation of ACE in the NDCs. We recently this analysis has shown that only 32% of parties include ACE and only 18% include youth. Considering this lack of focus, we want to put emphasis on education, transparency, and enhance opportunity for meaningful youth participation in the negotiation process. This week, ACE Working Group has been connecting ACE focal points from different countries and arranged a workshop for networking. But not all parties have a national focal point on ACE yet. Since focal point is the key person in a country to conduct ACE, we urge every country to appoint a national focal point. There has been good process in the SBI negotiation in these days as for the first time ACE was included in the agenda. This is encouraging, but it's only the beginning. We strongly believe that ACE should not be considered isolated from other negotiation issues, but should instead be used as a tool for an integrated solution in addressing all aspects of the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you panel, and please round of applause for the panel. And now